Welcome back to Veteran Revivals. I'm Art, your veteran idiot. It's past 4th of July. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's probably hard to tell on this camera, but I'm redder than this car. We have new parts for this thing. I finally want to solve this idle issue. Once and for all, if it's a matter of taking this engine out completely and throwing in a 4-cylinder, or fixing the part that I think might be the problem. The part that I think is the problem is this idle air control. And so we're going to switch it out with a GM style stepper IAC. This one in particular is from a Ford Fiesta, so the ports match up. If you were to get the GM one with the GM housing, you have to get an adapter for it to fit on the plenum. But if you use the Fiesta one, it fits right on. Anywho, before I want to do that, I have some suspicions that there may be a vacuum leak or some sort of unmetered air, which is kind of hard with a map sensor and AFR wideband on the back. It kind of makes up for any type of air going anywhere. However, it just doesn't want to idle properly. It doesn't want to do anything like that. So I want to smoke test it before we do anything, just to knock out some variables and ensure the entire system is sealed up. So we're going to do that first before we swap that out, repin the harness, and reprogram the computer. So I picked up this guy for like 50 bucks. And we're gonna see how well it works. The one at Harbor Freight was $579, so we'll see if this $50 one can make some poofy smoke with enough pressure to show some leaks. I can't even fathom paying $579 for a smoke machine at the cheapest place on earth. Wow. I think $50 is worth a try. So let's give this a try. I gotta fill her up first, and then we'll stick it on. I don't think it's gonna fit in the intake tube. There is an adapter for the intake tube that comes with this particular model, but the throttle body blade is so close to the end of the throttle body that I don't know this taper will fit in there. In fact, I know it's not gonna fit in there before it hits the throttle body. So maybe we'll pull the tube off and shove it in the end of the tube over here and block off the valve cover breather and see what kind of leaks we got. PCV will probably still smoke. I don't have a cap large enough for that, but we'll ignore that stuff and just look for actual smoking in other places. Fill her on up! It says to fill it with 20 cc's. Let's see, one more glug. Call it there. Doesn't hang very straight. Is that going to affect the smokeolation? Who knows? Okie dokie. Hook her up to a power source of sorts. Flip her on. There she starts going. Alright, let's pop that intake tube off. What? Alright. See if I got a plug big enough for this guy. I'll just put my thumb over it for right now. Alright, let's get in here and see if we can find some leaks. Hopefully. Alright, let's hurry up and do this because I can't have any fans on in here while I'm doing this. So the swamp cooler is off and it is starting to boil in here. So we know we're chooching out of that hole. I'll let it warm up a little bit so it gets thicker. And then we'll pressurize. Alright, here we go. And go. I don't see anything yet. It's blowing out of this intake tube, but it's pressurizing. There's something back here. Let me get a flashlight. Alright, we're blowing out somewhere underneath over here. Can't tell where. Alright, it's blowing out so much over here that I can't see anything else going on. So we're gonna pop this off and see where it's coming from.
Smoke! We've got smoke! Smoke!
So it is definitely blowing out of the TPS and the butterfly down in the bottom over here. But that's all inconsequential, honestly. To me it is, anyways. There's definitely smoke coming out of the TPS. Let's see if we can seal that better somehow. I think it's coming out from underneath. I don't see anywhere else. Nothing from the distribution block over here. That may not be coming from the TPS. It may be going across the front and coming up. Actually, I think that's exactly what it's doing. I don't think I have another. Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. It's blowing back, blowing up over the TPS. TPS itself is not smoking, it doesn't seem. Yep, it's blowing up around it. TPS itself is not smoking. Definitely a bunch blowing out of the bottom here, out of the throttle body blade, which is fine. It's whatever. We'll call it metered because the map is still picking it up and the wideband is picking it up. I don't see anything anywhere else. Let's look inside, make sure nothing's coming out of the internal map in here. All right, there's no smoke inside. All right, so even though there is smoke coming out of the TPS and out of the, or not out of the TPS, but the bottom of the throttle body blade, I'm just gonna leave it alone. I don't think that's causing any of the idle issues. It's kind of like the butterflies on a carburetor. There is some expected air to go through there. I forget what term it is, but it's not affecting it. If we had a mass airflow sensor, it would definitely affect it. However, being that it's MAP and a wideband AFR running the computer, this air should be expected. I don't know. We'll have to see if it's somewhat positional or not when we move the throttle body and see if it gets worse or whatever. So actually I'm going to do that right now. All right, let's see if our flow increases. All right, so it goes away kind of. Let me look something. So this car essentially will run without this tube on. There's no meter, there's nothing beyond here. The metering comes at the vacuum of the intake manifold, which is coming off a port in the back into the internal map sensor on the Terminator X. And then it's adjusting the air-fuel ratio in combination with that. However, there is nothing. Any leaks at this point should just be like, even though it's unmetered, or no, it is metered. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Shocking.
So any leaks here aren't really going to affect that. The computer will adjust for it. Now, if it was a fluctuating leak, I think that would be an issue with our idle. I don't think it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to block off this piece and I'm going to hook the smoke to this piece and see if we still got the same flowage, which I think we're going to, because I can see the oil dripping down on the inside of here. But the rest of the intake is not, which is nice. You know, that's a nice thing to have. So since I'm pretty confident that what leaks I do have in the throttle body blade are not going to affect the idle as much as I think it is, you may have a different opinion, and please, by all means, discuss in the comments and give me your rationale. However, for me, I'm going to go ahead and start moving to the wiring to put this stepper on, because I feel confident that what we have isn't causing this issue. And so what this Foxbody harness is on the Terminator X, and this is only for the Foxbody specific harness on the Terminator X. If you have the regular MPFI Terminator X, it's going to have the 4-pin GM style IAC connector. However, the Foxbody 1 has the Foxbody IAC connector with the 2 wires, which is going to be the 12 volt out and the pulse width modulation frequency, or whatever wire you want to call it. So these 2 wires will run all the way back to the J1B or P1B plug in the Terminator X. what I'm going to do is, since I don't have another output wiring kit that has these little pins that are extremely hard to find, is I'm going to move some of the input output wires that I am not using in the plug to where I need them. So the GM style plug has 4 wires: A high, A low, B high, B low, and it's not pulse width modulated, so you have to use different outputs. The Foxbody plug does not come with those wired in. And so what I'm going to do is, you can't hardly read it on this thing, but it shows your IAC A high, IAC A low, and then down here IAC B low, IAC B high. I'm going to take the red power wire, the 12 volt wire, and the green pulse width wire, and I'm going to move them to these outputs, or these pins. And then I'm going to take some colors over here, like this gray with a black stripe, and maybe this gray with a red stripe that are not being used at all, and I'm going to repin them in this plug to the B high, B low, and that's how I'm going to do this swap without buying that kit. Now later on, if I need those outputs and inputs, I will move it, but right now most of my stuff is running through the Pro Dash, so it's not that big of a deal. So we're going to go ahead and move those now and connect it up and see what we get. Okay, now that all that wiring and the pins are done in there and everything, we got to move out here. And this is what the plug looks like for the GM style IAC. So this is where it's going to get different for people depending on what they use. If you end up using a GM stepper with an adapter for your intake manifold or your throttle body, then you will just use the wiring and pin out that is shown on the diagram of the Holley harness. You'll wire it exactly how it's supposed to be. However, if you're using the Fiesta one like I have without an adapter that just bolts straight to the throttle body, you're going to have to move some of the pins around. I'm going to throw up a little diagram here for that for a little bit and show you exactly what I'm doing and where everything's supposed to go. So I wrote down on this piece of paper what my wires are and what my colors are. I'm going to go ahead and pull them up through this side first, and then we'll get started. So I'm going to clip these because I'm not going to use this plug at all anymore. It is effectively dead to me. I'm going to clip it in a manner that I can still use the wires. I just want to get rid of the plug. Alright, see you later. Okay, so I've marked these as the red wire is going to be my A low, and the gray and green wire is going to be my A high. And for me, looking at this plug, sometimes they give you, there it is on the back. It is very hard to tell. And I don't even know if it'll zoom in, but it says A, B, C, D on the back side of this. And so you're just going to follow that. Now my A low, which is my red, is going to go to the C on this one. Actually, I'm going to hook the high first since it's a longer wire and we'll know where to cut it, so these aren't all bunched together. So the A high is going to go to D on this side. Basically, you're just switching sides from the factory one. Crimp that guy, straighten this out so I know where to cut this one. Okay, so my A high and my A low are good. A high being in C, and then, I'm sorry, A low being in C, A high being in D. Okay, let's run these wires around. So that's all loomed. Now, for our B low, which is the black and gray, that's gonna go into A, and then our B high is gonna go into B on here. We'll cut these to the right length, throw them in. Oops. Almost hooked that one up to the wrong one. So B low in A, B high in B. I don't know why it's like this. Maybe Ford liked the idea of the stepper, decided it worked better, but they wanted their own wiring, so they were like, heck no, we're gonna do it this way. And they did it that way, I don't know. But that's the way it is. So now we're all wired up. We just got to change out the actual IAC on the throttle body, and then we can go through all the programming. I just happen to have another gasket over there for this, if this one looks bad. I'm really hoping this works. Like really, really hoping. Oh, I forgot to turn the swamp lure back on. No wonder I'm dripping sweat. Had the swass going on.
Gross.
All right, this hunk of garbage out. This one's got a crack in it, so we'll go ahead and ditch this guy. Throw on a new one. Now let's plug her in and get to stepping. GM steppers. Anyways. Boop. All right, let me grab the computer. We'll start programming. All right, here we go. Turn the key on, hook up this little guy. Hopefully everything connects. We had trouble the last couple times. And of course it's not working. Of course! That's okay. We'll pull the file from here and then try and edit it and see what we get. So what we need to do is we need to go in the system and tell it that the PWM pulse width modulated IAC is no longer there. So we'll go to pin map and then view outputs, and we're going to remove PWM from there. No longer needed. Opens that output up. Probably have to replace the wires because I stole them on the last one. But all right, now we're going to go to done. All right, and then we got to go over on our aisle down to settings, and we are going to change this up. Leave it on 5-liter Ford. Everybody says that that seems to be the ticket and it just works better that way, but we are going to change this to stepper. And there are some different settings or different indications on what to do for your P term and your D term, as well as the idle hold or the IAC hold and so on and so forth. We'll start messing with that business once we have a good idea if this thing is even working. So for right now, I'm going to leave that alone, and then if we have some issues with the idle, we'll go ahead and put in those inputs that are suggested on the forum and stuff like that. So for right now, we'll just go to stepper, and we're going to save all that. I'll leave all this other business that is no longer applicable, and we should be good to go. I did save, so we'll pull this out and throw it back in and see if the car starts and idles and what it shows them. And of course we'll have to warm it up to set the actual idle on the throttle body. Okay, the tune is uploaded. We're gonna leave all this the way it is, none of that matters, and we're gonna go in, fire it up, and see what we get. Not all together expecting this to just idle perfectly straight out of the box, but I have seen other people where it does do just that. All right, wish me luck. Should have done this a long time ago. Well, let's not count our chickens just yet. Let's let it warm up and see what we got. Alrighty then. So we're warmed up and the fan is on. When the fan kicked on, it started doing a little bit of lurching. So we're gonna have to play probably with the P-term, D-term, and see if we can speed up or slow down the IAC to meet it in between. But I'm pretty impressed that it is idling straight out of the box. So right now it's warmed up and we have a load of the fan. The fan's pretty much gonna always be on. Once it gets above 170 degrees, the fan kicks on. So we have one fan running pretty much the whole time. So I want to set the idle with that load on. Right now the IAC is like 17 or 18, so we're going to give it more throttle blade. And then look down, see where the IAC comes down. I want to get it between, it's supposed to be between 2 and 10. I'm going to shoot for like 5%. I'm sure we're going to have to mess with some stuff to get it tuned in perfectly, but so far it already seems way better. I haven't kicked on the AC yet either. That's going to be the real test. 10%. The idle I'm shooting for is 750. That may just be too low for this car, but it's not a crazy cam either. So it's bouncing back and forth between 9 and 10, so I'm just going to give it just a tiny little bit more. Alright, so it's sitting right about 6% right now, idling, kind of rolling back and forth between 760 and 820. It may just be happier around 800, and I may bump the idle up for it to sit in that range, but we'll see how it does. Fan's working well enough to kick off. Now with the fan off, it's dumping the IAC down. We're down 3, jumping back and forth between 3 and 4%. So, I mean, I like that. If it's gonna, without the fans idle at 3%, with the fans jump to 5, 6, around there, that's good to me. Let's let these fans kick back on, or that one fan kick back on, and then I'm gonna kick the AC on and see how it likes that. See, that's what I was talking about, is when the fan kicks on, it wants to surge a little bit. It does level out. Maybe we just need to set the P-term and D-term, slow the IAC down so it's not swinging so quickly. Or maybe it's not swinging fast enough. Like I said, we'll have to go through the settings. I may have to just take the idle up. Let's go to 800 on the idle and call it a day. I just went to 850 and we'll work through it. All right, I'm gonna kick the AC on, see what she thinks. Handled the transition pretty well. May have overshot it on the kick a little bit. The real question is going to be as it's coming down and trying to idle with this load. Well, I think it's at least good enough to give it a test drive and then start doing the fine tuning from there. AC's blowing nice and cold. Always when you're trying to test drive. Or at least he's in front of me, not behind me. If you know what I'm saying. So I've been driving for a while now. My hands are actually frozen. This air conditioning is literally freezing me out. And things I've noticed so far, I know there's going to be some fine tuning.
There's a little bit of a surge when it comes off the throttle, but it evens out and goes away. I'm okay with that. I can fine tune here and there and move idle and everything else I need to get rid of that. What it was doing before was stalling completely when you would push in the clutch and step on the brake. It would die. Every single stoplight, everything like that. So the load was just too much for it, I would say. And now, it does not do that. Oh shoot, a little woody. Nice. And when you sit in a stoplight, it chills. It sits there and idles perfectly. That's a huge improvement. Is it completely fixed? I won't know till I start going through all of the frequencies and everything else like that, but nothing I did seemed to work with the Ford IAC, with the pole switch modulated IAC. Nothing I did. Every time I would go out driving, as soon as I kicked on the AC, it would sit there and just surge like crazy. And unless I ramped the RPM up to like 900, it would just sit and surge, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Most annoying thing ever. This GM IAC, now don't get ahead of yourself, you guys, where you're talking about GM parts making the Ford work. This is technically a Ford Fiesta IAC. Argue with it what you will in the comments, but technically still a Ford part. Anywho, in between shifts and everything else like that, it's much smoother. It seems to just drive smoother. It's not as lurchy, not as jumpy. So far, it seems like this has fixed the problem. And that's pretty amazing and well worth the 20 or 25 bucks or whatever the IAC was. And then if you have to make up wiring, I think the kit for the input-output wiring is 30 bucks. I think that's definitely worth it. I think at some point we're gonna end up switching out this throttle body because it may be part of the problem. Not only is it whistle, and that's kind of annoying, but it also have the seals on the butterflies seem to be going out, so, or the throttle body blade. So that's something we'll probably end up switching out anyways, maybe like an 80 millimeter or something along those lines, maybe even port the intake plenum. Anywho, as of right now, this stepper has helped tremendously. So I would go ahead and throw out the recommendation that if you don't have a stepper on there and you're struggling with these things, you have a Terminator X, I would throw a GM or Ford Fiesta stepper on there. It's so cheap and it'll probably save you a ton of time in diagnosing and running through the stuff. That's just my opinion and what I've encountered so far on my 5-minute drive. So it's got to be true, right? Right? It's a fun little car. Wow. Like I was saying, I think we can call this one finally fixed. It drives so much better. I can't even explain it. Every time I improved it, I was like, oh, this is better, this is tolerable, and then it wasn't. It was just after time, it was just not tolerable. This thing is sitting and idling with the fans on, with the air conditioning, just chilling. No issues at all. The shifting is great. Everything seems to be fixed. I can polish some edges and everything will be perfect. So this long run of like 5 or 6 videos dealing with the idle where I just kept ignoring. You guys kept throwing comments down, suggesting putting in the GM stepper. I kept ignoring, not really ignoring, but it just wasn't on my list of things to do at the time. I was trying other things. Finally, I should have listened to you guys the entire time. This thing will work. I think it'll be a blast to drive. And AC is blowing cold and staying on, so I think we're good. We're slowly stepping away from the vintage style Mustang that it is with new technology, but I think it's all for the better. And I'm excited to see where we go from here and what happens next. I appreciate you guys joining me. I hope it helps you out with a lot of stuff and you get what you need to get your idles issues figured out. from this video. If not, shoot some comments down or send me an email and I'll help you walk through what I learned from this anyways. But thank you guys again. Check out the merchandise. And thanks for watching. As always, have fun. And immediately after closing that out, it's overheating. All right, it's coming back down. We're good. See you later.